Well, good afternoon. This is Pat
Everybody,
Cruzy with the Big
it
Iron
writes perfect for
Livestock
newspapers
Market
called a
Wrap
copy.
Up. It is June 2nd. We're already halfway through the year, and I've got Daryl Holiday with Country Futures. And Daryl, it's been a wild 6 months. We're halfway through the year, and just looking at the closes today, we had another aggressive day in the markets. I pulled some data from some of the region out in this country. Wyoming, Colorado virtually didn't have much trade at all, whether they were lightweights or heavier cattle. South Dakota, 750 to eight weights were 3 to 8 higher in that 338 to 340. Um, and I need to update this on Southern Trade. They were
Street, but I
about
got it.
$15 lower, up 4 to 8. But you shared a chart with me here on the area cash steer average, the five-state area cash steer average, and as you can see, we continue to do nothing but go up. And I was asking you earlier, is there a trend line that we can incorporate into this and see if we even 100-day that I put into bar charts? I mean, they showed a gap in the what was it, the 290 range back in 23. Um, and maybe it was lower than I'd have to look,
It was
but
lower than that. It was lower
would
than
have
that. Yeah.
been maybe it'd be 190 is what it would be.
Yeah. Right. Right.
It'd be
Yeah.
190, and uh, there's a little gap there. But other than that, we just continue to rocket higher. What's your thoughts today after looking at the information you've put together on this current market?
Well, I mean, I think it just the perspective needs to be, there's no signs of any back off in these cash fed cattle trade. It's just been straight up. I mean, with very, very few exceptions, and, you can find about two of them in there that lasted about a month, but it's been straight up. And that's really what drives it. I mean, you can put a whole bunch of futures charts up in front of you, but the futures market's at a big discount to the cash market because it walks on eggshells every day, thinking
Yeah,
someday the balloon's gonna burst. But the cash fundamentals continue to be very good. We're into our fed cattle supplies are down 2 to 3%. You're trying to give calf prices, and one of the problems you're going to run into is we're now into the seasonal tightness of where there's just nothing moving, very
nothing there.
little movement. Fed cattle supplies are down, like I said, 2 to 3%. And, the back half of this year, there's a lot of projections based on what we think are reasonable projections. We're going to see 3% lower fed cattle supplies right through the end of the year. And what accentuates this a little bit is, we're people are complaining, well, we can't find the cattle. But part of the reason you can't find the cattle too is you want us to feed them to larger size to give you more beef, but that actually pulls more cattle off the market for this week. And just packers find themselves scrambling for cattle every week, especially those cash buyers. And with and the results just been higher. Yes, there will be something that will top this. It'll probably be on the demand side. I don't think there's a wall of cattle coming anytime. But at some
Yeah.
point prices get too high on the demand side and you break. And that you got to find the top in that retail beef, and we haven't found it. At least there's no signs of that yet.
Right, right. Yeah. Uh, I've read some information here this morning from a couple different articles on, you know, will we ever get back to the cow
Yeah.
inventories we once had here 6 and 7 years ago? And if prices stay at an elevated level for this longer, there's really not a lot of incentive for this younger generation to take the risk to buy $2,000 heifer calves. There's just seems like there's a lot of risk in trying to develop those heifers. Just sell them and not replace. Do you have any thoughts on what this replacement market's going to look like in the future?
I think it's going to have to. I agree with you. It's going to happen generally internally. I don't think cattle are seen as a great investment by our by some younger generation. One, it's increased work. Two, there's a lot of costs outside of buying the animal. And so those who are most likely to grow the herd internally are those who have already incurred those fixed costs that, whether it be a pickup with a bale roll or whatever you want, you come up with
Yeah,
it. Fencing,
right.
those types of fixed costs that are already there. It doesn't matter if you have 50 head or 100 head, or you have 100 head or 200 head. So I think it's going to happen internally, and I think it's going to be much slower. I think it'll be a much slower growth. We'd probably like it to be a bit larger, but no, I don't think we'll get the cow size back to where we did for a long, long time, mainly because we've also found that we can do a lot more. We can provide a lot of beef to consumer without going back to the cow numbers.
Those
Now,
numbers.
yeah, so I think it's, we're, the one thing I think has also happened, and I guess to give some credit to this little thing we do once a week, and we talked a lot about this clear back into January, that as we move into the summer, if you could eliminate these areas of drought, you're going to get these numbers even tighter and tighter. And we sat and watched these areas of drought very slowly get eliminated. I started first the Southern Plains. We're getting, Western Nebraska. There are areas still dry. I'm not trying to say that, but we don't
Yeah,
have any area right now saying I got to get rid of cattle because I don't have anything to feed them. That is a
yeah,
very limited area, and that is where and yet that's going to spread out your placements. It also is going to it limits just the overall pressure to sell, whether it be a kill cow, a slaughter cow, whatever. We're not seeing that supply pressure. That can change, but right now that's just not happening.
right, right. Yeah, and weather patterns have kind of changed the last 3 weeks, and we
Yep.
still getting having conversations with some guys in eastern Wyoming that
Right.
they're surviving day by day, but
Yep.
not getting those calls like we were about guys thinking about starting to cull that later
Right.
group of cows, the older mature cows, and
Mhm.
moving their way through the herd. So
Yeah. Yep.
very
Yep.
good,
The
good.
and we saw last week this cash fed cattle market. Nebraska average was 235.31 for all the steers, and that compares to. I mean, first of all, that's by far a record. That's phenomenal, and but it's $13 premium over the Kansas number, which a Kansas number who sells so much captive supply cattle, they just don't, they don't have the ability to negotiate cash. And Nebraska does such a better job in that area, and they're just getting more money for their cattle. And it doesn't sound like, well, that's $13. What is that? Oh, well, it's about $200 a head. I mean, give or take,
Yeah,
depending on what they
right.
weigh. And that is a big deal, and that's why you see these feeders. There's lots of reasons why feeder cattle to the north are higher than the south. We've known that. I could give you a list of 10 reasons that wouldn't have anything to do with it. But one of them we don't talk about enough is corn's cheaper and they get more for their fed cattle. You're talking about $250 pretty easily, more margin there, and so they're going to spend it on the feeder cattle. We certainly see that in the averages when we get the data.
Yeah, right. Very good. Yeah, normally, and I think we saw it here, you know, 8 to 12 weeks back. That spread between Kansas and Nebraska
Yeah.
was
Oh
fairly
no.
close,
Yeah, we got
right?
that down to we never really dipped under $3 or 3.5, but we've gone from 3.5 to 4 to 13. That is a
13. Yeah,
major move. And
right.
we should mention, that's even with Kansas still setting records. And they're going to be higher this week. We've already got some cattle trade in Kansas. Well, they're probably going last week, but we had some cattle trade on Kansas on Saturday at 225. So that's $3 higher than last week's high, or the average. So we're
Right.
already seeing packers that need to get cattle again this week.
You bet. Great. Well, I won't keep you. We've got to keep moving. You got to pack your bags and head out, and I do as well. But
Okay.
always appreciate your time, Daryl. And until we talk again, you have a great week, and we'll catch up with you next Monday.
Thanks, Pat. Be safe.
All right. Take care. Okay. Very good, Daryl. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.